It doesn't matter where Rexton is assembled, in native Korea, Tatarstan, or the Far East. In any case, the body stubbornly resists corrosion for years. Only the oldest specimens have pockets of rust on the hood cover and tailgate. And the fastest is on the less resistant metal of the roof. Chips on the edge of the windshield should be tinted immediately. In addition, the exuberantly blooming generous chrome decor on cars older than 2007 can spoil the appearance. Most often the frame of the wheel arches was changed under warranty, and the intumescent paint of the rails. Since 2012 they began to be covered with an anti-corrosion layer. But the frame hidden from the eyes after 8 to 10 years often turns out to be in a deplorable state. Without periodic anti-corrosive treatment, the ridge may lose both strength and the numbers stamped behind the right front wheel. Which, by the way, does not initially happen to all cars, but if it is indicated in the documents, do not forget to make sure that the characters are intact before buying. No less carefully you need to check the equipment of the body. Dampness and road chemistry often condemn the rear wiper motor. After 40 to 60,000 kilometers, door locks may wear out. If a Rex older than 2011 has made a puddle, the first thing to do is take a look at the washer reservoir. It has a habit of cracking near the mount due to vibrations. And if the climate control system stops working in automatic mode, it's enough to update the frail outside temperature sensor behind the front bumper. And be sure to carry with you spare bulbs. If the brake lights begin to short out in the rear lights, the electronic gas pedal may stop responding to pressing. And also keep an eye on the condition of the battery. Due to the low voltage, the regular immobilizer bucks up, and here you can't do without a visit to the electrician on the tow truck. The battery, in turn, is capable of surviving a generator. For restyled cars younger than 2007, after 100 to 120,000 kilometers, requiring repair, and for earlier copies, replacement. Another problem with the generator is an oxidizing, or even falling off, power wire. In diesel cars, the belt drive also aggravates the situation. And if the tensioner, through whose fault the belt slipped off the roller after 40 to 60,000 kilometers, was finalized in 2011, then the overrunning clutch remained unreliable. The squeal of a slipping belt, which, when ignored, turns into a tapping of a collapsing clutch, warns of a problem after 70, 90,000 kilometers. The diesel engines themselves are partly from the Mercedes pedigree, and they inherited from the originals not only the impressive durability of the cylinder piston group, capable of working 500,000 kilometers, but also much of their medical history. For example, the most popular, 65% of all cars, 5-cylinder unit 2.7 with Delphi fuel equipment became famous for the unsuccessful fastening of expensive steel nozzles in an aluminum cylinder head. If the first owner skimped on heat-resistant grease every 20 to 30,000 kilometers, the nozzles tightly grow into the cylinder head in just 2 to 3 years. And after their surgical removal, if you manage to save the head of the block, you will probably have to fork out another $100 for a new valve cover. It is removed after the injectors. No less nozzles are diligent in their places in glow plugs, which sometimes refuse to help when starting after 30 to 40,000 kilometers. The nozzles themselves, like high-pressure fuel pumps, even if you don't mess with fuel, usually ask to rest after 150,000 kilometers. After 2010, nozzles with a modified control valve became more durable, but it's better not to tighten the repair of the pump at the first sign of a pressure drop. Metal chips from it will spoil the entire fuel system. Often updated under warranty, the Mitsubishi variable geometry turbocharger on a 2.7 diesel engine with increased power, 186 horsepower, in cars younger than 2007 is capricious than a simpler Garrett unit on a 165 horsepower counterpart, which, in addition, became more reliable in 2008. The sealing rings on the axle were improved, and if, after 40 to 50,000 kilometers, any of the turbines suddenly stops blowing properly and the engine turns sour, the modulator valve is to blame, which in 2010 acquired better protection against dirt and became less problematic. In 2009, by installing heating in the crankcase ventilation tube, both versions of the 2.7 diesel got rid of a very curious misfortune, shooting the oil dipstick in the cold. A recall campaign even happened on this occasion. With the 2-liter diesel engine that appeared in 2012, no less hassle. If on the older engines the hydraulic tensioner of the durable timing chain is to blame for extraneous knocks at idle after 40 to 50,000 kilometers, then the ditch chain itself is not particularly hardy for a 2-liter engine critically stretches after 120 to 140,000 kilometers. Problems with extracting injectors, $300 each, are the same, and the EGR valve is no less capricious, clogging up with deposits from short and slow city trips after 50 to 60,000 kilometers. Less hassle with petrol engines. Unlike diesel engines, which, with a run of 80 to 90,000, can be underheated to operating temperature, due to which, since 2011, they have increased the life of the motor fan drive clutch 2.7 due to the anti-corrosion coating of the bimetallic plate. Gasoline inline 4, 2.3 and 6, 3.2 suffer from overheating. The recipe is simple. Either remove the radiator for cleaning at least once every couple of years and preventively change the not too reliable thermostat, or risk easily warping blockheads. And this is, at best, the removal and grinding of the cylinder head, and often its replacement. In a 4-cylinder engine, after 40 to 50,000 kilometers, a leaky or even jammed pump can complicate the situation. And with the same mileage, you need to keep an eye on the drive belt tensioner. The tapping of the backlash sleeve will help to find out about its imminent failure. And both engines are not averse to squandering oil through oil seals or sealing caps after 50 to 80,000 kilometers. The 5-speed mechanics Dymo's TSM54, rooted in the BorgWarner/Tremec T5 box from the 80s, flows infrequently and is generally quite reliable. Unless the input shaft bearing suffers from high loads, which it reports with a hum after 100 to 120,000 kilometers. And at the end of 2011, the waterproofing of the souring contacts of the neutral sensor was brought to mind. The fate of automatic transmissions may be richer in events. Take at least the units of the Australian company BTR, a former subsidiary of BorgWarner, and the 4-speed M74 box created specifically for Koreans in 1989 for cars with a 2.9 diesel engine and 2.8 and 2.3 petrol engines, and developed 2 decades later under the supervision of the Chinese company Geely. The 6-speed M78 with the 2-liter turbo diesel often suffer from oil starvation. The culprit is a filter with a felt membrane, which, for 2 active drivers, clogs with friction dust so that the clutches, devoid of lubrication, finally burn out. The well-deserved Mercedes automatic 722.6 of the mid-90s design migrated to Ssang Yong with a 3.2 petrol engine and 2.7 diesel engines, taking a full bouquet of their source. Achilles heel, 2 gentle electrics. The electrical board with speed sensors, $200, transformer interlock and shift solenoids, and breath pressure regulator can't handle overheating or dirty oil. And the rubber seals of the electrical connector of the board become tanned over time and begin to let oil into the computer. In 2008, the connector was finalized. There are questions about any of the 3 types of all-wheel drive. In the simplest part-time transmission with the hardwired front end, in 2009 a failed Rizdaka control unit was improved, and its main weak point was the front-end vacuum clutches, which are especially unreliable on cars older than 2007. Their seals sometimes lost their tightness after just a couple of years, and the coupling stopped working. With the TOD, torque on demand, transmission automatically distributing torque across the axis, it's even more fun. If after 120 to 150,000 kilometers in sharp turns the car starts to wedge, as if with locked differentials, it means that the chain or lining of the dry clutch package has worn out in the BorgWarner transfer case. And even without forcing the Fords, after 5 to 7 years, corrosion can do things, eating the wiring, connector, or handout servo motor. And after 50 to 70,000 kilometers, the front hub, oil seals, and axle bearings may become unusable. The same mileage is also critical for the axle shaft support in the AWD permanent all-wheel drive system for cars younger than 2007 with a 3.2 petrol engine and a 2.7 diesel engine with increased power. But the transfer case itself, devoid of electrics, is unpretentious and hassle-free. But the front drive shaft can set the heat. After 50 to 80,000, its slots are able to cut off without warning during a jerk and immobilize the car. In order to protect yourself from such adventures, from time to time the cardan must be removed, disassembled, and lubricated. By the way, when servicing machines with other transmissions, also do not forget to replenish the grease in the cardan shafts. Yes, Ssang Yong Rexton needs constant injection, like an ancient UAZ. The independent rear multi-link complete with AWD transmission is weak with ball joints, floating silent blocks and longitudinal rods. An audit at the cost of $200 to $300 is sometimes required before 100,000 kilometers. But the dependent rear suspension of other versions is not eternal. The exception is the quickly sagging springs and tired Mando shock absorbers, which do not always live up to 70 to 90,000 kilometers. But in the front suspension of restyled cars produced in 2007 to 2012, a real-time bomb. Removable ball bearings of the lower levers do not have a large margin of safety and at the same time work to brake. More than one owner of Rexton, who ran only 30 to 40,000 kilometers, refreshed the unforgettable impressions of the Ziguli youth when the ball pin flew out of the cage on a bump and the front wheel broke on the go. In addition to vivid emotions, a broken wheel drive, dented upper arm and fender often remain in memory. And despite the fact that until 2010 the design of the ball joint was improved annually, urgently changed the hinge at the first sign of illness, which is a characteristic creaking or a slight play when turning the steering wheel. After this, one can take a philosophical attitude even to swelling of brake hoses that lose strength after 100 to 120,000 kilometers, or to a brake pedal that has become a stake due to a diesel vacuum pump that failed at the same mileage. And even more so, to the cables and parking brake mechanisms that turn sour after 3 to 5 years. Do not forget to look at the power steering hoses. They do not have a large margin of safety and can simply burst during operation. More often this happens in winter, when the working fluid thickens in the cold. And after 100,000 kilometers, you need to be ready not only to buy steering tips, but also to repair the rack and pinion steering mechanism itself with a broken bushing tapping on bumps and current oil seals.